So I found a watch that has ended my quest for the ultimate submariner. It's not what I was expecting to buy. It's so compelling, so fun, and it gives me that hit of nostalgia. I can hear the Chemical Brothers playing. I wish I could license the music for the intro. It's 42 millimeters, it's titanium, it's got a GMT function. Can you guess what it is?
Unit lost. Accessing Brotherhood archives.
The enormity of their stupidity is just overwhelming.
With my whole recent Submariner dilemma, I was starting to feel like the dancing chicken from that Werner Herzog movie. Now, while the 5512 from Shreve, Crump and Lowe that I borrowed and consequently kicked off this whole obsession is truly indeed a once-in-a-lifetime piece to own, I need to stay strong and stick to my guns if I am to acquire my Grail watch before the end of the year. Besides, I fear once the initial exhilaration of owning a 5512 fades, I would start to hear B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone playing in my mind before too long. So it is time to try something a little bit different. When lost in these horological rabbit holes, one needs to refocus with ruthless pragmatism. So I thought about when I actually do wear my subs and for what purpose. To me, they serve, as they do for many, a kind of Bondian multifunctional central core position in the collection, doing everything from timing jogs, boiling of pasta, to casual smart situations and beyond. And speaking of former Commander Bond of Naval Intelligence, fortuitously, as if a sign from the horological gods, Tudor recently released a Marine Nationale GMT Pelagos. A logical and refreshing addition, in my opinion, to the best of their contemporary divers, and far more cohesive than their oversaturated yawn fest that is the endless cash grab called Black Bay. The marriage of, well, let's face it, originally a classic aviation complication, but in a diving platform is perfect for aircraft pilots of the French Navy, even if it has essentially civilian cosplay markings this time around. But it got my brain buzzing, and then it clicked. So the watch I actually decided to trade in my last Submariner for and give up pining for the 5512 is also an ultra versatile watch with a GMT complication, but probably not as you'd expect, and a connection to the movies of John Woo. Another clue there. So can you guess what it is yet?
You're out of your mind. Ain't it cool?
Broken Arrow, a John Woo film.
I'll start off with a quick knife check. This is the Bijou, I think it's pronounced. This is a gift from a dear friend of mine. There we go. Okay. Box within a box within a box. Here we go. And this is from huntingtonwatch.com. Shout out to them. They were very, very professional. Let me just check all this information. A little card there. Oh, I almost gave the game away. I didn't buy from Japan this time because I actually found a really good deal domestically, so which is unusual for me, especially with this brand. Right, moment of truth. Drum roll. Oh,
ain't it cool?
My God, I am wearing my Navi timer. Oh wow, okay, there it is with a protective cover. It's the manual, papers, chronometer certification, all that good stuff. Wow, it is light. It is light because, of course, it is solid titanium. Wow, it really is light. And I'll explain why I decided to go with this later on. So there's a little wear and tear, but normal. This should be a high polish here, that inner ring. It's looser than I anticipated. I've only ever had experience with the very first generation, which is now firmly vintage. It's about the same size as the Navitimer, which is what I'm looking for. But how do you get the displays on? This is going to be a bit of a learning curve, like a high-end G-Shock for me, basically. Anyway, let's see if I can figure out how to operate the thing. Interestingly, it's the same size as the new Tudor GMT Pelagos in diameter. However, with that insanely precise high-end thermocompensated quartz movement inside, along with a short lug-to-lug, it's super thin and wears far smaller, while still giving you a ton of readability via the effective orientation of an Explorer-style expansive dial. Now, I've done a deep dive on the aerospace before, when I briefly owned the highly underrated Chronospace spin-off, so for the sake of brevity, here's the cliff notes. First released in 1985, it coincided with the Top Gun aviation hype of the subsequent years, even if the watch was not featured in that particular movie. It was in fact a higher-end pilot watch interpretation of the iconic industry-changing and record-breaking 1982 Seiko H558 Ani Digidiver, aka the Ani, that had become the hottest trend at the time via the wrists of its namesake. So I'm about midway through a jog and it is fantastic. You got perpetual calendar, minute repeater, which is something you don't see often, countdown, stopwatch, everything you need basically, and dual time zone, very easy to use even with the single crown and with gloves on. Essentially you scroll through in the down position, the desired complication. When you want to set it, you pull out the crown as if it's a normal, mechanical timepiece, set it and then put it back in. When it's back in, it becomes a pusher essentially. Stop, start, and then hold down. Very easy, very intuitive. And then unlike the Ani, you have just hour and minutes, so there's no ticking, so you forget it's quartz, kind of like my wife's Cartier Tank. Operational with, I got my no time to die gloves on. Shout out to David Zaritsky there. Come to think of it, Bond should wear an aerospace. Way more practical than the Submariner. I wonder if I'll miss it. Anyway, there you go.
$250 million by 0900 Utah time. If you have not... Good God.
But for me personally, it wasn't until a decade later that I noticed it, especially prominent on the wrist of John Travolta, as the villainous United States Air Force Major Vic Deakins in John Woo's super fun, albeit schlocky, second English language movie. And those of you who know the channel may have noticed my profound love of Woo's work, especially his epic era of classic Hong Kong collaborations with Chow Yun-fat before he moved to Hollywood.
Would you mind not shooting at the thermonuclear weapons?
So, you're the new addition to the Brotherhood.
Now, I've done a video on the power of nostalgia with watches, and this watch certainly evokes a strong element of that, despite this particular model being a later second generation of the mid-2000s. You can basically split the aerospace into 3 generations, with some transitional models with incremental improvements in between, like my Advantage I just unboxed, but also plenty of rarer and highly sought after special commissioned editions thanks to Breitling's customization program for military, governments and commercial entities. Always in titanium, the original was in a more compact 40mm diameter, with typical 80s two-tone era stylings, and if you're feeling extra villainous, even one in solid gold. During the early 2000s, the second generation arrived, with some early versions designated Advantage. With an upgraded caliber 79, it finally became officially COSC certified, even though it always performed well within that, with a much needed backlight added, and all the modern materials that were lacking in the earliest models pre-1995, like superluminova, sapphire glass, and a boosted 100 meters water resistance. Then from 2013 onwards, there was the final third generation called Evo, which was even bigger, bolder, better, and naturally more expensive. The advantage, in my opinion, however, is the perfect midway evolutionary point of this undeniable icon, as it occupies a kind of Goldilocks pleasing, just right feeling, because it's still evocative of that sweet 90s vibes aesthetically, but being better value on the secondary market, and essentially the same functionality and robustness of the current Evo descendants.
Looks exciting, doesn't it? And I can assure you it is.
Ain't it cool?
Shake it, baby.
The mid-90s to early 2000s was a hell of a time. I can almost smell that intoxicating whiff of plastic from the fan of my compact Presario as it boots up to play Duke Nukem, Red Alert, Civilization, Half-Life, Warcraft 2, Age of Empires, and countless others.
Congratulations! You've just purchased one of the finest multimedia computers available today, the Compact Presario.
The Compact Presario model line includes the 500 series, our all-in-one desktop computer.
And speaking of nerding out, the bezel is unquestionably reminiscent of the Stargate portal from the largely forgotten Roland Emmerich movie of the same period. The caseback engraving has a kind of hypnotic avionic calculation scale, which, to be honest, I forget what it does. Do I even need those scales? But also kind of abstractly reinforces that retro-futurist sci-fi look, as if they are hieroglyphics or star charts holding the clue to where the Stargate will take you. So if you haven't guessed, this watch reduces me to a giddy 12-year-old boy. So it's been a few days since the unboxing, and since then I've actually put it on the rubber strap. This was on my Navi timer, posted about it on the Instagram, and I did like the rubber strap on the Navi timer. It made it very comfortable, but I've since put it on the Wrist Candy Watch Club canvas, which has just basically been sitting in a drawer unused, and I think it really works, the aviation theme there, and it's comfortable and great for larger watches. But on the rubber strap, the aerospace really comes alive. There's just something about it. Lowers the weight even more. The spring bars there, it just works flawlessly. I might even get the green. I might order the green as well. I think the green would really work with the titanium. I've also bought another Rios strap. These are made in Germany, the best there are, because since I sold the Cosmonaut, I actually sold the old Rios with that Cosmonaut. Shout out to John there who bought it. So I ordered another one, and this time I've gone for cognac. I just love the way it tapers. So I'm going to probably put this on the Navi timer. Now in terms of negatives, because you're using the crown quite a lot, this notch of this, very instantly recognizable bezel kind of protrudes a bit too much, and you get kind of caught in it. I accidentally pushed the bezel. The action to it, it is 60 click. It's not the best action in the world. I'm not sure if it's just because of this is used. So what is absolutely extraordinary, and I don't know if this is coincidence or great product placement, because it was the mid-90s after all. Kurt Russell in Stargate wears a Breitling. Check this out. Let me turn the camera around. There it is. Sirius, I think it's pronounced. But it has the same bezel as the aerospace. In conclusion, it mixes elements of many of my favourite watches. The branding, heritage and presence of a Navi timer. The simplicity, legibility, aesthetics and ease of use of the Rolex Explorer. But then all combined with the complications, accuracy, extremely low weight and tactical toughness of my beloved Casio DW290, aka the Mission Impossible watch. The watch snobs will undoubtedly hate it, most likely because it's quartz. But I think true enthusiasts will get it, especially if you spent some serious time with one of these bad boys. It actually feels like something an intelligence or case officer would choose. It's no accident that Arnie himself would progress to another Annie Digi, the sadly discontinued Casio AMR 320R, as a spy in James Cameron's Capolavoro, True Lies, well after his Seiko phase.
My husband is a good man.
So you think he's boring?
Well, maybe a little.
You're fired.
And like that watch, its low profile, wear with anything versatility while giving you a lot of smartwatch features without being trackable is very fitting. I'm still actually shocked nobody commented on the recent 10 watches to avoid video about the disturbing fact that the US military warned active personnel to think twice about wearing Apple Watches while on duty overseas. But I digress. I guess what I'm trying to say is I like the fact that it works offline. It's very self-contained, and it feels like the instrument for professionals of the slogan that made Breitling so revered by real-life pilots, actors, military personnel, and just unabashed watch nerds like myself during its heyday in the 90s. But ultimately, it does what all great watches should do. It makes you question why you need anything else, and it gets me excited about watches again, free of any hype, no waiting lists, and quite easily accessible. If you have a little bit of patience, you can score one for an absolute steal. But with rumours circulating that the aerospace might be phased out soon post the recent Orbiter B70 release, the trigger was pulled also, as I just did not want to miss out on some fun before it was too late. It's sad that the aerospace is going to be has been phased out, but I get it. It's reached its quintessence before the next evolutionary phase, which of course is the smartwatch. I'm going to put my British sensibilities aside, talk about soldi per un attimo. I paid between 2 and 3, sold my Submariner for just over 5, so it left me a good chunk of change to put towards the Breguet Grail. Certainly more nod than GDI, which I love.
I love the smell of Tiberium in the morning.
But I'm happy. I'm going to get a lot of hate because it's quartz, but I don't care. And I get to keep my Rolex Explorer. I'm happy. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more free and independent content. I'm going to go home and play some Command and Conquer, I think. Alright, onwards and upwards. Don't forget to like this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.